Friends, if you're a fan of spine-chilling horror films and want to watch the super hit movie Annabelle Comes Home, 2019, in English, then make sure to hit that like button right now. And if you're visiting our channel for the very first time, don't forget to subscribe to stay updated with exciting videos about the latest and greatest in cinema. Today's video is going to be all about Annabelle Comes Home, one of the most talked about horror films from the Conjuring Universe. In this video, we'll explore everything about this terrifying and suspense-filled movie. Whether you're a hardcore horror lover or just someone who enjoys a good scare once in a while, this video is made for you. We'll begin by talking about what this movie is, the storyline it follows, and what makes it stand out from other horror films. We'll dive into where and how you can watch Annabelle Comes Home, whether it's on an OTT platform or a satellite television channel, so you don't have to waste time searching. I'll be giving you all the details about its streaming availability in your region, making sure you don't miss the chance to watch the spooky film. But that's not all. We'll also explore the entire journey of this movie, from its pre-production phase where the planning and casting took place, to the filming process filled with creepy sets and eerie lighting. Then we'll get into the post-production work like editing, sound design, and visual effects that helped bring the terrifying doll Annabelle to life on screen. I'll share with you the film's budget, how much was spent to make it as scary and immersive as possible, and how much it earned at the box office around the world. We'll also take a look at the music and background score, because what's a horror movie without creepy sound effects and suspenseful music? The sound design of Annabelle Comes Home plays a huge role in building tension, and we'll discuss how it contributes to the overall experience of the movie. And of course, we'll talk about the actors and the characters they played. I'll tell you who starred in the film, what roles they played, and how they performed, from the leads to the supporting cast. We'll also review the acting performances and how each actor contributed to the film's haunting atmosphere. On top of that, we'll break down the storyline in a spoiler-free way, giving you a short review of the plot, so you get a clear idea of what to expect without ruining any of the big scares. And if you love knowing movie trivia and behind-the-scenes facts, you're in for a treat, because we've got plenty of interesting and little-known facts about this film that will surprise even the biggest fans of the horror genre. So friends, I highly recommend you watch this video till the end, because whether you're planning to watch Annabelle Comes Home for the first time, or you've already seen it and want to know more, we've got a lot of fascinating information to share. Get ready to explore the dark and mysterious world of Annabelle, where every creak, shadow, and whisper might be more than it seems. So without wasting any more time, let's start the video. Alright horror fans, buckle up tight, because Annabelle Comes Home doesn't waste time with slow scares or gentle introductions. This story drops us right into the eerie and cursed universe we all love, and then slams the door shut behind us. It's not just about a haunted doll anymore. This time, it's about what happens when you lock pure evil in a glass case, surround it with crucifixes and prayers, and then leave it alone with 3 teenagers in a house full of cursed objects. What could possibly go wrong? Well, everything. And that's what makes this narrative so wild, unpredictable, and downright fun to explore. The film opens with Ed and Lorraine Warren, the legendary paranormal investigators, transporting the demonic doll Annabelle back to their home. From the very start, you can tell that Annabelle isn't just a creepy antique, she's a full-blown supernatural conduit. Even during the car ride home, she starts pulling her tricks, attracting malevolent spirits, and threatening lives. It's a strong opening that sets the tone. Annabelle is not just possessed. She's a beacon. Evil things are drawn to her like moths to a flame. Once the Warrens successfully seal her inside their artifact room, behind sacred glass, blessed by a priest, surrounded by every form of spiritual protection known to man, you breathe a small sigh of relief. She's contained, or so we think. The Warrens then head out on a trip, leaving their young daughter Judy in the care of her kind-hearted babysitter Mary Ellen. It's supposed to be a quiet, peaceful weekend. But of course, that peace doesn't last. Enter Daniela, Mary Ellen's friend. She's dealing with the tragic loss of her father and becomes obsessed with the idea of contacting him. She believes the Warrens' house may hold the key to the afterlife, and when left alone, she does what every horror fan begs characters not to do. She opens the door to the artifact room. The room itself is a museum of nightmares, a samurai armor that oozes death, a haunted wedding dress, a piano that plays by itself, and dozens of cursed items that each come with their own disturbing history. And at the center of it all is Annabelle. Daniela unlocks the case, touches everything, and just like that, unleashes a storm of evil. Annabelle doesn't even need to move or speak. Her mere presence wakes up the darkness sleeping in every corner of that room. From here on out, the movie transforms into a haunted house thrill ride. The structure is simple, one night, one house, but the way it unfolds is anything but ordinary. The film throws the rulebook out the window by turning the house into a living nightmare where every hallway holds a new terror. One moment we're dealing with a haunted television that shows horrifying glimpses of the future. The next, we're following ghostly footsteps into shadowy rooms where cursed coins appear out of nowhere and the terrifying ferryman waits in silence. The scares aren't limited to Annabelle, she's just the instigator. The real terror comes from everything else she awakens. And the pacing, it's relentless. There's no calm between storms. Each time a character turns a corner or opens a door, you expect the worst, and the film delivers. The hallway scenes are suffocating, filled with flickering lights and whispers from beyond. The bedroom becomes a battlefield. Even the kitchen, normally a safe zone in horror, becomes a place where evil manifests. The camera doesn't just follow the characters, it stalks them. And the music, it's not just background noise. It's an invisible character, building suspense and striking at the perfect moment to make you jump out of your seat. What makes the narrative so effective is its emotional depth. Sure, it's scary, but there's also heart. Judy, the Warrens' daughter, isn't just there to scream and run. She's a brave, quiet child who understands the weight of her parents' work. She sees things too. She knows what Annabelle is capable of. Her bond with Mary Ellen and even with Daniela adds a layer of warmth to an otherwise chilling story. And then there's Daniela's guilt, her desperate need to speak with her deceased father. It's not evil that drives her to open that door, it's grief. The horror here doesn't just come from ghosts. It comes from unresolved emotions, regret, and the thin line between curiosity and recklessness. The turning points are crafted with surgical precision. The moment Daniela hears voices and steps into the artifact room, the movie shifts into high gear. When the ferryman appears for the first time, cloaked in death, it's a terrifying reveal. When Mary Ellen is chased by the hellish, werewolf creature that emerges from a cursed board game, the boundaries of reality start to dissolve. And perhaps most memorable of all is the haunted wedding dress, the moment it possesses someone and turns them into a ghost bride hell-bent on stabbing anyone in sight. It's not just scary, it's stylish horror with a purpose. Every artifact brings its own flavor of fear, and each encounter is like opening a new chapter in a haunted storybook. And yet, somehow it all fits. The story manages to keep track of all these supernatural threads without losing focus. You never feel lost, even when ghosts are popping out left and right. The narrative holds steady because at the core, it's about three girls trying to survive a night of unleashed darkness. They grow, they panic, they fight back. And through it all, the film gives us a surprisingly empowering story about facing your fears, both literal and emotional. What makes Annabelle Comes Home unique is how it takes the familiar haunted house formula and turbocharges it with everything the Conjuring Universe has to offer. It's not a slow burn. It's a supernatural theme park that traps you in one location and dares you to keep your eyes open. And because we see everything from the perspective of teenagers, not ghost hunters, it all feels more grounded, more relatable, and way more intense. You're not watching experts navigate a haunting. You're watching normal people completely out of their depth, and somehow finding the strength to fight back. So no, the story doesn't twist timelines or jump across dimensions. It doesn't need to. It tells a linear tale, but fills it with so much fear, tension, and emotional resonance that it feels like a journey through your worst nightmares. And that's exactly what makes it so effective and so fun. You don't just watch Annabelle Comes Home. You survive it. Let's dive even deeper into the people at the center of Annabelle Comes Home, because the beauty of this film is that while the walls are shaking, spirits are howling, and cursed artifacts are springing to life, it never forgets that characters are what truly carry a story. These aren't just placeholders running from ghosts. They're complex, emotionally driven people who are learning, evolving, and facing more than just supernatural threats. In fact, the scariest thing some of them face isn't even Annabelle. It's guilt, isolation, loss, and the fear of never being understood. Starting with Judy Warren, she's not your average horror movie kid. She doesn't scream her way through the film, and she doesn't blindly walk into danger either. Judy is someone who has grown up surrounded by the paranormal. While other kids are worried about math homework or playground drama, Judy is busy wondering if spirits are watching her from the corners of the room. She knows who Annabelle is. She knows what her parents do isn't a game. And even though she doesn't always say it out loud, you can see the burden she carries in her quiet, observant demeanor. She's seen the way people look at her family. She knows the judgment, the whispers, the fear. And yet, she doesn't try to run from it. When things go horribly wrong that night, Judy doesn't freeze, she focuses. Her transformation is subtle but powerful. You watch her go from this shy, emotionally closed-off girl into someone who steps up, takes initiative, and refuses to let fear define her. Mary Ellen, on the other hand, could have easily fallen into the classic babysitter in a horror movie stereotype, but she doesn't. She's not there to be the damsel in distress. She's kind and responsible, but also surprisingly tough. There's something deeply refreshing about her simplicity. She's not dealing with grief, trauma, or haunted family history. She's just a good person who happens to be in the worst possible situation. Her protective instinct kicks in hard when Judy is in danger, and you really feel that surrogate big sister energy. When cursed spirits start attacking, she doesn't hesitate. She's the one who comforts Judy, helps fight off the possessed bride, and keeps the group grounded. What's interesting about her character is that her arc isn't about personal demons. It's about rising to the occasion, proving to herself and to the audience that even someone who wasn't meant to be a hero can become one when it matters most. Then we get to the most layered and emotionally charged character of all, Daniela. She is complicated in the best way. She's the one who sets the story into motion, and it would have been easy for the film to paint her as the troublemaker. But instead of villainizing her, the movie does something smarter. It makes her pain the emotional heartbeat of the story. Daniela is reeling from the recent loss of her father. She blames herself for his death, and she's consumed with the idea of reaching him again. She's not curious about the artifact room because it's spooky. She's drawn to it because she's desperate for answers, for a second chance, for closure. When she opens Annabelle's case and inadvertently lets chaos loose, she's not just unleashing ghosts. She's letting her guilt explode into the physical world. Her arc is about facing that guilt, owning up to her actions, and realizing that not everything broken can be fixed. And that moment when she encounters her father's spirit, it's not comforting. It's devastating. It's the kind of emotional gut punch that sticks with you, even after the screams fade. Daniela's development is raw, heartbreaking, and incredibly human. What's so brilliant is how these three characters, each so different, fit together like pieces of a puzzle. Judy brings quiet strength. Mary Ellen brings emotional balance. Daniela brings vulnerability. Together, they represent three shades of courage. They start off the night as a kid, a babysitter, and a curious friend, but by the end, they've formed a bond forged in fear, forgiveness, and shared survival. Their interactions feel natural. Their dialogue doesn't sound scripted or forced. You actually believe in their chemistry, in their trust, and in their willingness to go to hell and back for each other. Even supporting characters are given more than just surface traits. Take Bob. Sweet, awkward, guitar-strumming Bob. His crush on Mary Ellen could have been played for cheap laughs, but the film actually lets him have depth. He shows up, runs into a literal werewolf, and instead of hightailing it out of there, he hides in a chicken coop to stay close and help when he can. He doesn't need to be brave. No one expects him to. But he chooses to stay. That says a lot about who he is, and it makes his role more than comic relief. He represents the everyday person rising to the occasion. What's also worth noting is that the supernatural entities themselves almost serve as extensions of the character's inner fears. Annabelle, of course, is the puppet master. She doesn't directly harm, but she manipulates. She fuels fear, awakens regret, and calls out to the darkest parts of each character. The haunted TV shows Judy a horrifying future, preying on her fear of losing her parents. The ghostly bride targets Mary Ellen, maybe sensing her strong emotional connection to others and trying to twist it into violence. The spirit of Daniela's father doesn't give her comfort, it brings her torment. forcing her to confront what she tried to suppress. The ghosts aren't random, they're personal, tailored, and that makes the characters' reactions feel so much more real. So yes, Annabelle Comes Home delivers on horror, but it also delivers on heart. These characters don't just scream and run. They face their worst nightmares, grow stronger through the fear, and remind us that real courage isn't about having all the answers, it's about stepping up even when everything inside you is screaming to run. They're the reason we stay invested when the lights flicker and the shadows move. Because we're not just watching a haunted house story, we're watching people find themselves in the dark. Let's keep digging into the performances of Annabelle Comes Home, because the deeper you go, the more impressive it becomes. This movie is a buffet of emotional nuance, genuine chemistry, and well-calibrated fear, all served up by a cast that understands horror is just as much about feeling as it is about frightening. What's special here is how the actors don't just perform for the scare, they perform for the story. Every scream, every moment of silence, every trembling hand isn't just there to jolt the audience, it's there to build a world you believe in. And that's rare. McKenna Grace, playing Judy Warren, is the absolute emotional center of the film. She brings something to the screen that's incredibly difficult for young actors to pull off, a quiet internality. Judy doesn't have pages of dialogue or big dramatic monologues. Her character is introverted, shy, deeply affected by the weight of her parents' ghost hunting profession. And yet, McKenna fills every quiet moment with intensity. It's in her eyes, in the way she listens more than she speaks, in the way she hesitates before walking into a room, as if she knows something is waiting on the other side of the door. She doesn't play Judy like a normal kid. She plays her like someone who's grown up watching the world through a crack in the veil. You feel the difference. McKenna doesn't just act scared when ghosts appear. She acts like someone who has lived with fear her whole life and has learned how to breathe through it. That's a huge difference. It's not wide-eyed panic. It's steely, hard-earned composure. And it makes Judy one of the most compelling young characters in the entire Conjuring universe. Then you have Madison Iseman as Mary Ellen, the babysitter with nerves of steel and a soul full of sunshine. Madison pulls off a performance that balances tenderness and toughness without ever veering into cliché. She's sweet, yes. Kind, definitely. But when things get chaotic, when she's being stalked by a demonic spirit in a wedding dress, she doesn't scream her way through it. She responds. She fights. Madison plays Mary Ellen like someone who's been thrust into a nightmare but refuses to let fear control her. Her warmth isn't just charm, it's a shield. It keeps Judy safe. It gives the audience a calm center to hold on to. And the subtlety in her performance, especially in the scenes where the spirit of the bride starts manipulating her thoughts, shows just how much she understands a character. There's one scene in particular where she's frozen in a trance, holding a knife, and her eyes flicker between terror and confusion. You actually believe she's fighting something inside her. That's hard to sell. Madison does it with one look. Now let's give Katie Sareev her flowers, because as Daniela, she has the most emotionally loaded role in the film, and she nails it. Daniela isn't just dealing with ghosts. She's dealing with grief, guilt, and a deep longing to fix something that can't be fixed. What Katie brings to this character is rawness. You can feel that she's walking through this movie with emotional bruises that no one else can see. When she sneaks into the artifact room and interacts with the cursed items, she's not doing it out of recklessness, she's doing it out of pain. Katie never lets you forget that. And later, when she's trapped in that same room, surrounded by spirits feeding off her guilt, her performance reaches this fever pitch of emotional intensity. Her body language changes completely. Her voice shakes, but not from fear, more like she's choking on years of bottled-up sadness. And when she comes face to face with what she believes to be her father's ghost, Katie plays it with such heartbreaking vulnerability that you almost forget you're watching a horror movie. It becomes deeply human in that moment. That's not easy to pull off in a genre built on spectacle. But she does it. And then there's Michael Cimino as Bob. Now, Bob isn't on screen as much as the core trio, but his performance is a reminder that even side characters can shine. Michael plays Bob with such earnestness, such awkward teenage charm, that he becomes more than just a comic relief character, he becomes real. He's scared, obviously. Who wouldn't be when there's a werewolf prowling the backyard? But he stays. He comes back. He doesn't get a dramatic arc or a big backstory, but Michael makes every second count. Even when he's hiding in a chicken coop, there's a twinkle of bravery behind his wide-eyed panic. He brings levity without undercutting the tension. He never feels like he's in a different movie. He's part of the same terrifying world. He's just reacting to it like a regular guy who wasn't expecting to battle the supernatural that night. And that contrast makes the fear hit harder. Let's not forget the cameos from Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson. Their screen time is brief, but they bring such a grounded, graceful energy that it instantly reestablishes the emotional stakes of the universe. They're not just the ghost experts, they're Judy's parents, and their warmth and strength ripple through the entire film. Even when they're not on screen, you feel their presence. You feel how their world has shaped Judy, how their love has given her a foundation strong enough to face the horrors in the dark. That's what makes their performances so essential. They're the emotional DNA of the story. What's remarkable about the entire cast is the chemistry. These actors don't feel like they've been dropped into a horror set for a few weeks. They feel like people who know each other. You believe that Mary Ellen and Daniela are real friends. You believe that Judy looks up to Mary Ellen like an older sister. The little shared glances, the way they talk over each other in conversation, the natural rhythm of their dialogue, it all adds authenticity. And that's what makes the scares work even better. Because when things start going wrong, you care who's in danger. You're not just waiting for the next jump scare, you're rooting for the characters to survive, to heal, to make it through the night together. Ultimately, Annabelle Comes Home is a performance-driven horror film that understands a crucial truth. Ghosts may haunt the house, but it's the people who bring it to life. This cast doesn't just run from demons, they make you feel every pulse of fear, every whisper of doubt, every flicker of strength. And that's what takes this film from a simple scare fest to something far more memorable. Let's dive into the direction of Annabelle Comes Home, because this movie doesn't just run on haunted dolls and creepy sound design. It runs on the smart, sharp, and surprisingly playful vision of director Gary Dauberman. Now, Dauberman may be best known as the screenwriter behind Annabelle, It, and other Conjuring Universe nightmares, but this film marks his directorial debut, and oh boy, what a debut it is. This isn't just a guy who knows how to write horror, this is a guy who knows how to build it, shape it, and make it feel fresh inside a universe that's already packed with demons, possessions, and jump scares galore. What's fascinating about his direction here is the tightrope he walks between horror and heart. This could have easily been a gloomy, grim, one-note haunted house flick. But Dauberman crafts something a bit more layered. He injects a surprising amount of warmth and character into the chaos. He doesn't just direct scary moments, he directs relationships, tension, anticipation, and, yes, a bit of fun too. The tone he sets is like a roller coaster. Slow, atmospheric climbs where your nerves tighten, followed by wild plunges into darkness that make you flinch. But you're always strapped in, always engaged. He knows when to hold a shot for that perfect breath of dread. He knows when to let silence do the talking. And he definitely knows when to unleash the storm. Dauberman builds this film like a haunted funhouse. Everything takes place mostly inside the Warren house, but it never feels static or repetitive. Instead, each room becomes a different horror experience. The pacing doesn't rush. He takes his time introducing the artifacts, teasing their sinister histories. The slow burn makes the eventual unraveling feel earned. When Annabelle gets loose, the house becomes a living maze of terror, and Dauberman plays with that space like a magician. He doesn't just have spirits pop out from behind curtains. He stages the scares with theatrical flair, reflections in mirrors that don't move, shadows that stretch a little too long, doors that creak open just enough to set your imagination on fire. You're never just watching something scary, you're waiting for it to happen, and that suspense becomes the movie's engine. His use of shot composition is another win. There are these beautiful wide shots where the house looms in silence, almost like a character itself. Then there are claustrophobic close-ups where the frame tightens around the actors' faces, locking you into their fear. One brilliant moment involves the classic doll in the glass case shot, but instead of cutting away quickly, Dauberman lingers. He lets the camera sit. He makes you stare. And just when you think you're safe, he shifts the angle slightly, adding a reflection or a movement in the background that changes the entire scene's energy. It's subtle, precise, and incredibly effective. What really stands out, though, is how Dauberman juggles multiple horrors at once. This movie isn't just about Annabelle. It's about an entire gallery of cursed objects, each with its own unique brand of terror. There's a haunted wedding dress, a ghostly ferryman, a cursed TV, a possessed samurai suit, even a werewolf. It sounds chaotic, but under Dauberman's direction, it becomes a showcase of haunted house variety. He keeps each spirit style distinct. Some scare through slow-building tension. Others go for fast-paced chases. And somehow, none of it ever feels messy. It's like he's orchestrating a horror symphony, letting each ghost play its part without overshadowing the rest. He also directs with a sense of empathy that elevates the material. You can tell he cares about these characters, not just the scares. He gives them moments of quiet, vulnerability, and even humor. That's not something you always see in horror films. Judy, Mary Ellen, and Daniela all have full personalities, and their emotional arcs are given room to breathe between the supernatural madness. And that's Dauberman's doing. He's not just moving characters from one scare to the next. He's building a story around people who matter. That emotional grounding is what makes the terror more impactful. When the lights flicker or the piano plays on its own, you're not just reacting to the sound, you're thinking, is Judy okay? Is Daniela going to make it out of the artifact room alive? That's smart storytelling. That's good direction. Let's also talk about how he uses silence. Horror directors often rely heavily on jump-scare sound cues, but Dauberman knows the power of quiet. Some of the film's most terrifying moments happen in near silence. A creaking floorboard, a breath held in suspense. The absence of sound becomes its own soundtrack. It forces you to lean in, to become hyper-aware of every movement. And then, when the scare is hit, it lands 10 times harder. That kind of restraint shows maturity. He's not going for cheap thrills. He's playing the long game, letting the dread build until you can't take it anymore. Even the way he directs the artifacts is worth mentioning. They're not just props, they're personalities. Dauberman gives them presence. The way the camera moves around the samurai armor, for instance, feels ritualistic. The way he lights Annabelle, low, warm light that casts shadows across her painted eyes, gives her this unnatural sense of life. She's never shown walking or blinking or moving on screen, but under Dauberman's eye, she feels alive. That's not CGI. That's direction. In the end, the way Gary Dauberman directs Annabelle Comes Home feels like a love letter to the haunted house genre with a modern, character-driven twist. He doesn't just want to scare you. He wants you to get lost in the world, to feel like you're walking through those dark hallways, hearing whispers from the basement, watching the shadows crawl across the wall. His fingerprints are all over this movie, not just in the story, but in the mood, the pacing, the way it wraps fear in warmth and terror in empathy. It's smart. It's stylish. It's spooky in all the right ways. Absolutely. Let's go all in and truly soak in the eerie, visually chilling world of Annabelle Comes Home. Because when we talk about cinematography in this film, we're not just talking about how things look, we're talking about how the look of the film feels. The lighting, the camera movement, the framing, the use of space, these aren't just technical choices, they are the language of horror in this movie. And what's so fascinating is how this film uses that language not just to scare you, but to keep you suspended in this constant, skin-crawling awareness that you are not safe, no matter how still or silent the frame may be. Let's start with the composition. Almost every shot in this movie is layered like a visual trap. A character will be centered in the frame, usually in a tight space like a hallway, or standing with a large, looming room behind them. But what's genius is how often the action doesn't happen front and center. Instead, the cinematography teases your attention toward the background, to reflections in mirrors, to objects sitting too still in the shadows, to things just slightly out of focus that you think are moving. It's a game of visual hide and seek, and the audience is constantly scanning the frame like a detective, asking, "Wait, did that doll just blink? Was that door open before? Is someone behind her?" The use of long takes is another fantastic element here. The camera isn't just cutting from one scare to the next. It's stalking. It glides down corridors. It weaves around characters like something breathing just over their shoulder. There's this one moment when Mary Ellen is alone in the hallway at night, and the camera follows her from behind with a low, floating movement that mimics a ghost's POV. No dramatic cuts, no quick flashes, just slow, creeping dread. You're not being scared by what you see. You're being scared by the anticipation of what you might. It's horror built on patience, and cinematographer Michael Burgess has mastered the art of giving you just enough to make you uneasy. Let's talk lighting, because this film treats light like a character. It's not just about visibility, it's about emotional temperature. When the movie begins, we're introduced to the Warrens' home in warm, golden tones. It's cozy, familiar, grounded in normal life. But the moment darkness falls, the lighting shifts to a deep blue and cold gray palette. Everything soft turns hard. Shadows stretch out like fingers. And it's not always total darkness. They're clever about that. Most scenes are lit by just a single source. A candle, a flashlight, the glow of a television screen. That creates deep, uneven shadows and loads of negative space, the perfect canvas for fear. And oh, the shadow work. There are entire sequences where nothing is really moving, nothing is really happening, but the shadows do all the talking. One unforgettable sequence is in the artifact room, where the lighting is so minimal you can barely see anything beyond the immediate object of focus. But then, in the background, a light flickers, and just for a second, you think you see a face. Or is it a statue? Or is it your mind playing tricks? That's the brilliance of this cinematography. It uses your imagination against you. It turns you into a participant in the horror. The framing also plays beautifully with the concept of entrapment. This film doesn't go wide unless it's trying to isolate a character within a larger, menacing environment. More often than not, the shots are narrow, boxed in, and oppressive. Characters are framed in doorways, behind glass, seen through windows, or reflected in mirrors. They're always being observed. You get the sense that something is lurking just outside the edge of the frame, just barely out of sight. And that constant unease is a huge part of what makes the visual storytelling so effective. The cinematography makes you feel watched, just like the characters are being watched. Now let's get to some showpiece shots. There are moments in this movie that are so visually rich and well-constructed they could be paintings, if the paintings were possessed by something evil. One perfect example is the sequence with the cursed bridal dress. When Daniela is in the artifact room and puts the dress on, the lighting turns sickly pale. Her reflection in the mirror becomes a key visual motif, the real Daniela versus the possessed one. The shot is bathed in an off-white light, with streaks of silver that give it an ethereal, ghostly glow. But it's the use of symmetry that elevates the tension. The mirror image is off by just enough that you notice something's wrong before you consciously understand what's happening. Another standout sequence is the ferryman haunting. The way coins glint and float through the air isn't just creepy, it's hypnotic. The cinematography slows the pace and tightens the focus, almost like you're falling under a spell along with the characters. The way those coins reflect light, the subtle blurring of the edges of the frame, the gentle drifting of the camera, it's dreamlike. But like a nightmare, there's no softness to the dread. It builds slowly until it hits you hard. Even silhouettes are used as weapons. There are scenes where we don't see the ghost, we see its shadow. A shape on the wall, a figure passing by a doorway, a reflection that doesn't match the movement of the character. These are crafted moments, and the camera knows exactly how long to linger. Sometimes just an extra second or two, just long enough to make you start questioning your own perception. And finally, one of the most brilliant tools in the cinematographic arsenal here is focus. The depth of field in this film is manipulated to mess with your expectations. You'll get a shot where the foreground is razor sharp and the background is a hazy blur. But your attention keeps drifting back to the blur. Because something's going to move back there. Something always does. And when it finally comes into focus, it hits you like a gut punch because your eyes have been pleading with the shot for resolution, and now you have it. Too late. So, is the cinematography in Annabelle Comes Home just about capturing the action? Not even close. It's about pulling you into the action. It's about holding you in suspense and letting your mind fill in the blanks. It's about making the audience a character in the horror. And when the camera moves, you don't just see it, you feel it in your spine. That's not just filmmaking. That's a haunted house built out of lenses, lighting, and pure atmosphere. So you want to go even deeper into the ghostly gears and supernatural stitching that is the editing and pacing of Annabelle Comes Home? Perfect! Because the rhythm of this film isn't just about moving from one scene to the next. It's about guiding your heartbeat, manipulating your breathing, and turning the very structure of the movie into a haunted maze where every corridor feels like it's leading you towards something you're not ready to see. This isn't just editing as craftsmanship. This is editing as dark magic. Let's take it from the top. At first glance, the pacing might seem slow, but that's intentional. It's a slow simmer, not a microwave popcorn jumpscare fest. The early editing choices are about laying a deceptively safe foundation. The cuts are clean, the transitions are soft, the tone is warm. Scenes are allowed to linger a little longer than usual. Characters get full conversations without interruption. Daniela talks about her dad. Judy goes to school. Mary Ellen bakes a cake. All very normal. But that's the trick. The editing lulls you. It builds trust. It wants you to get cozy, to let your guard down, so when things start to go off the rails later, it hits 10 times harder. The ghost train doesn't announce its departure, it just starts moving, and by the time you realize you're on board, it's already speeding through pitch-black tunnels. Now let's talk about the middle section, the grand unleashing of the horrors. Here, the editing becomes a multitasking monster. We're talking about a movie that juggles multiple hauntings happening at once, and somehow, the editors make it feel coherent, not chaotic. Daniela's locked in the artifact room, facing off with her own grief and a cursed wedding dress. Mary Ellen's trying to survive a hallway full of invisible ferryman spirits. Judy's dealing with haunted televisions and shadowy entities. At this point, a less experienced team might have gone with quick, flashy cuts to try and inject energy. But not here. The editing chooses rhythm over speed. It flows. You move between stories like drifting through a dream, except it's the kind of dream where the walls bleed and dolls whisper your name. And within that flow, the timing of the cuts becomes surgical. One of the most brilliant techniques used throughout is what I'd call anticipation edits. These are cuts that come just a second before or after the moment your brain expects. So maybe Daniela reaches toward something, and you think the cut will take you away before anything happens. But it doesn't. The edit holds, just long enough to make you twitch. Or sometimes it cuts early, robbing you of a payoff, forcing your imagination to fill in the blank. That kind of editing doesn't just affect the scene, it affects your psychology. You start feeling uneasy even during mundane scenes because the rhythm is so unpredictable. Your internal clock is thrown off, and suddenly, a simple pan down a hallway feels like walking into a trap. There's also something incredibly effective about the use of silence in the editing. Not just the absence of music or dialogue, but the way the editors cut to silence. Sometimes it's as subtle as a door clicking shut and everything going mute for half a beat. That moment of dead air becomes a vacuum for anxiety. It pulls you into the scene in a way no soundtrack could. The silence isn't empty, it's charged. You know something is coming, and the film milks that knowledge for all it's worth. Every beat of silence is like the inhale before a scream. And the editing knows exactly when to release that breath. And what about jump scares? Yes, there are a few. But this film doesn't abuse them. It doesn't throw in random bangs every 2 minutes just to jolt you. Instead, it earns every scare through patient buildup. And that's a direct result of the editing pace. You don't get a scare every 5 minutes. You get slow tension, long takes, and then a scare that's so well-timed it feels like a punch in the soul. It's like the editors are playing with a jack-in-the-box, cranking it slowly while your nerves fray, and when the clown finally jumps out, it's because they waited just a little longer than expected. Let's not forget the transitions, because in a movie like this, the way one scene blends into another is part of the storytelling. The editors use clever visual and audio cues to connect scenes. A close-up of a flickering candle will cut to a hallway bathed in the same warm glow. A character's breath will fade into wind howling through the artifact room. These aren't just pretty tricks. They trick your brain. They create a sense of continuity that makes you feel like the house itself is alive, that you're not watching scenes, you're traveling through them. And when the transitions get harsh, cutting from dream to reality, or from calm to chaos, they hit that much harder because you've grown used to the dreamy flow. Even the final act is paced with precision. Many horror films stumble during the climax, either going too fast and becoming messy, or dragging their feet with endless fake-out endings. But here, the editing builds the chaos and then controls it. Each thread is dealt with in sequence. The ferryman, the bloody bride, the werewolf, the TV, and Annabelle herself. Each mini-arc gets its due time, with the editing shifting between the girls in a way that never confuses or overwhelms. You're on edge, but you're never lost. That's incredibly hard to pull off, and it's a testament to how well thought out the structure is. And when it's all said and done, the final scenes breathe. The editing doesn't just slam to black. It eases out. It gives the characters, and the audience, a moment to recover. A beat to process what just happened. That's something many horror films forget. Fear is more effective when it ends on a whisper, not a shout. And Annabelle Comes Home whispers with purpose. So in the end, the editing and pacing aren't just technical achievements, they're storytelling devices. They manipulate time. They manipulate tension. They guide your eyes and ears like a haunted conductor waving an invisible baton. You're not just watching a scary movie. You're being led through one, with every cut, every pause, every beat designed to keep you on the very edge of your seat, wondering if the next frame is going to make you scream or make you think you imagine something in the dark. Either way, the edit wins. Alright, let's dive even deeper into the world of Annabelle Comes Home as soundtrack and score, because here, the music isn't just a background element, it's a masterclass in creeping dread and emotional manipulation. Joseph Bishara, who's the genius behind much of the Conjuring Universe's terrifying soundscapes, approaches the score like an expert puppeteer pulling the strings of your nerves. His music doesn't just follow the movie, it drives it, like an invisible force lurking just out of sight, always ready to pounce when you least expect it. From the moment the film opens, the score sets an unsettling mood. It doesn't greet you with grand orchestral flourishes or catchy tunes. Instead, it whispers, hums, and vibrates beneath the surface like the breath of some restless spirit trapped in the artifact room. Those low, rumbling drones and eerie, stretched-out string scratches feel like sonic cobwebs catching on your skin. You're drawn in, but at the same time, you're warned, this is no safe place. The score plants the seed of anxiety early, long before any visible scare, making you constantly aware of a lurking menace, even during calm scenes. What's fascinating is how the music plays with space and silence. Bishara knows when to pull back, letting the absence of sound speak volumes. In some of the film's tensest moments, the music disappears completely. That sudden void isn't empty, it's heavy with anticipation. Silence becomes a breeding ground for fear because without any musical cues, your mind starts filling in the blanks, imagining the worst. And just when you start relaxing, that silence is shattered by an unnerving screech or a chilling whisper embedded in the score, jolting you out of false security. It's a masterful game of push and pull that keeps your adrenaline cycling like a haunted roller coaster. Recurring motifs add another layer of sophistication. There's this signature sound effect, something like a warped, glitching shimmer or a cracked mirror's tinkling, that surfaces whenever Annabelle's evil presence draws near. This sonic signature becomes a Pavlovian trigger for your nerves. Just hearing it primes you for trouble, even if the doll herself is nowhere in sight. This subtle audio callback enriches the storytelling without a single line of dialogue, letting the music tell part of the story on its own. Every time the motif returns, it deepens the tension and reminds you that Annabelle's malevolent influence is never far away. Beyond the pure horror elements, the score also perfectly mirrors the emotional arcs of the characters. Take Daniela, for example. Her struggle with grief and guilt is echoed in the music with haunting, melancholic undertones. Amid the tension and dread, the score allows brief moments of vulnerability and sorrow to slip through, creating an emotional depth that goes beyond simple jump scares. This blending of eerie textures with subtle emotional cues enriches the viewing experience, making the supernatural threats feel even more personal and devastating. Another brilliant touch is how the score incorporates diegetic sounds, the sounds that exist within the world of the film itself, into the musical landscape. A ticking clock becomes a rhythmic pulse in the background. A piano's lonely note bends and warps into the score's eerie atmosphere. A record player's crackle blends seamlessly with the haunting drones. These sounds blur the line between what's music and what's world noise, creating an immersive experience where you feel trapped inside the haunted house itself. It's a seamless fusion that enhances the film's unsettling realism while maintaining the eerie otherworldliness of the story. The score also shines in how it manipulates pacing and tension. Instead of relying on loud, sudden shocks, The music often opts for a slow, creeping build-up, droning notes that thicken the air like fog and subtle, discordant melodies that unsettle your subconscious. The rhythm of the score ebbs and flows, echoing the film's editing and narrative beats, so every scare, every revelation feels earned. You're not just startled, you're emotionally wrung out, your nerves stretched tight and ready to snap at any moment. Even the quieter, normal scenes benefit from this musical approach. When characters share moments of calm or connection, the score doesn't disappear. Instead, it shifts tone, offering a soft, fragile underpinning that underscores the tension lurking beneath the surface. It reminds you that even in the lightest moments, darkness waits patiently just outside the frame. And finally, the ending leaves you with a chilling aftertaste thanks to the music. The score doesn't just fade away. It lingers, a ghostly echo that haunts the credits and follows you out of the theater. It's as if the house itself is whispering one last warning, and the music becomes the voice of that lingering evil, refusing to let you forget the nightmare you just witnessed. In short, the soundtrack and score of Annabelle Comes Home don't just enhance the film, they are the film's heartbeat, its breath, its shadow. They wrap around the story like a cloak of darkness, pulling you deeper into the haunted world and refusing to let go until the very last note fades away. And trust me, once this music gets in your head, it's not leaving anytime soon. Let's really dive deep into the themes and messages woven through Annabelle Comes Home, because beneath the creepy doll and the eerie jump scares, this film is packing some surprisingly thoughtful ideas that make it stand out. This isn't just a simple ghost story. It's a layered tale about human nature, emotion, and how we wrestle with the darkness both around us and inside us. One of the most striking themes is fear itself, not just fear of the supernatural, but the way fear can consume and control people. The movie cleverly uses the haunted doll and the spirits as metaphors for our own internal struggles. Take Daniela's grief and guilt over losing her mother. It's not just backstory, it's central to the emotional undercurrent of the film. Annabelle, with all her sinister presence, becomes a physical embodiment of that fear and unresolved pain. This makes the horror resonate beyond just the spooky moments, because it taps into a universal experience, the idea that we all carry ghosts of our past, emotional baggage that haunts us and influences our choices. The film suggests that confronting those fears is as terrifying as facing any demon, and that unresolved emotions can be just as dangerous as any cursed artifact. Alongside this is the theme of curiosity and temptation, which is classic horror material but handled here with a fresh perspective. Daniela is repeatedly warned to stay away from the artifact room and the evil it contains, yet her curiosity pulls her toward the forbidden. This isn't just youthful recklessness. It's an exploration of a very human trait, the irresistible urge to uncover secrets, even when you know the risks. The film is almost whispering to the audience. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed again. The temptation to meddle with forces beyond our understanding is portrayed as an inherent human flaw, and it's this impulse that sets much of the chaos in motion. This theme feels especially relevant in today's world, where the hunger for knowledge and exposure sometimes leads us into dangerous territory, whether emotionally or literally. Another powerful theme is protection and sacrifice. The Warrens' role in containing Annabelle is about more than just locking up a scary doll. They represent the responsibility to shield others from darkness and evil. Daniela's journey highlights how protection sometimes requires bravery, selflessness, and difficult choices. She steps into the role of protector, transforming from a frightened girl into someone willing to face unimaginable horrors to keep her loved ones safe. This theme brings a certain depth and heart to the film. It's not just about running from evil, it's about standing firm against it, even when the odds are stacked against you. There's a quiet heroism here that adds emotional weight to the supernatural action. The idea of the power of belief is also woven throughout the story. The film hints that supernatural forces gain strength from fear and doubt, and that courage and faith can weaken them. This isn't just about religious faith, it's about mindset, perception, and the way belief shapes reality. The character's willingness or unwillingness to confront the supernatural head-on affects the outcome, turning the horror into a kind of psychological battle. This adds a philosophical layer that makes the story more than just a sequence of scares. It's a reflection on how the human mind deals with fear, uncertainty, and the unknown. Family and legacy is yet another important theme. The Warrens' ongoing battle with evil is passed down, with Daniela inheriting not only the dangers of Annabelle but also the wisdom and warnings from her guardians. This passing of the torch shows how fear, knowledge, and trauma can be inherited across generations. The past is never truly gone. Its shadows stretch into the present, shaping new battles and new characters. This adds a cyclical feeling to the story. Evil isn't defeated once and for all, but contained temporarily, waiting for the next encounter. It also touches on how legacies, both dark and light, shape our identities and choices. What's brilliant about the film is that it doesn't hammer these themes into your head. Instead, they're subtly integrated into the characters' emotions, decisions, and the unfolding events. The horror elements don't just exist for thrills, they emphasize these messages, making the story richer and more resonant. You don't just feel the scares, you feel the weight of the characters' fears, their courage, and the consequences of their actions. Even the seemingly simple idea of containment, locking Annabelle away in the artifact room, becomes a metaphor for how we try to control or hide our fears and traumas. The film asks what happens when those fears are ignored or underestimated, and how ignoring the darkness doesn't make it disappear. It lingers, waiting for a crack to slip through and wreak havoc. This is a deeply human story told through supernatural horror, and that's what makes it stick with you. So, while Annabelle Comes Home delivers all the chilling moments you'd expect from a haunted doll movie, it also invites you to think about fear, grief, curiosity, responsibility, and legacy in a fresh and meaningful way. These themes weave through the scares and the suspense, giving the film a lasting emotional impact that lingers long after the lights come up. It's this mix of horror and humanity that makes the movie more than just a ghost story. It becomes a haunting reflection on what it means to face the darkness inside and out. When we really dig into the visual effects and CGI of Annabelle Comes Home, what stands out immediately is the film's impressive knack for blending traditional practical effects with modern digital wizardry in a way that feels totally natural and immersive. This is a horror movie that understands the importance of making the supernatural elements believable and tangible, rather than slipping into over-the-top, distracting CGI spectacle that pulls you out of the experience. Instead, the filmmakers take a much smarter, more measured approach, where every effect, whether physical or digital, serves the story and amps up the unsettling atmosphere without ever feeling out of place. Let's start by giving a lot of credit to the practical effects, which are the backbone of this film's creepy vibe. There's something about holding a physical object in your hands, something that actually occupies space and light, that just can't be perfectly replicated by CGI. The Annabelle doll itself is a perfect example. Its worn porcelain face, the cracks, the fixed but lifelike glass eyes, and even the way it moves or sits just so, all of this is anchored by practical craftsmanship that gives the doll a weight and presence you can almost feel through the screen. Those close-up shots of Annabelle's face, where the camera lingers on her cracked smile or soulless stare, have a chilling effect that CGI dolls often fail to capture. This tactile reality grounds the supernatural elements and makes the doll's presence far more unsettling. But of course, there are moments in the film where the limitations of practical effects naturally become apparent. That's where CGI steps in, and it does so with a very light touch. When Annabelle's movements grow more unnatural, like tilting her head at impossible angles, floating across a room, or animating in ways a puppet never could, the digital effects seamlessly pick up the slack. What's impressive is how subtle the CGI is. It doesn't scream digital effect or look plasticky. Instead, it enhances the creepy feeling that the doll is alive and malevolent without breaking the spell. This subtle digital work is key because it preserves the tension and mystery, making you question what's real and what's not in the scene. One of the cleverest uses of visual effects is in the way the film builds atmosphere. The digital effects don't just appear as obvious manifestations of evil, they are woven into the environment through subtle cues like shifting shadows, flickering lights, and ghostly wisps of smoke or mist. These effects feel like part of the world itself, creating a creeping sense of unease that makes you feel like something is always lurking just out of sight. The effects work almost like visual whispers, never too loud, but enough to keep your eyes glued to the screen and your heart racing. This kind of understated digital work is where the film really succeeds, using visual effects not for cheap jump scares, but as tools to build a thick, unnerving mood. even better are the moments where practical and digital effects team up to create something greater than the sum of their parts. Take, for example, scenes where objects move on their own. Sometimes, you'll see a prop physically moved by wires or strings, classic practical effects magic, and then CGI is used to smooth out that motion or add subtle unnatural details, like a shadow that doesn't quite belong or a slight distortion in the air. This combination tricks your brain into buying what you're seeing, making the supernatural feel convincingly real. It's a beautiful dance of old-school craftsmanship and modern technology, and it's clear the filmmakers know exactly when to use each to maximum effect. Importantly, the film avoids the pitfall that traps many modern horror movies, overusing CGI to the point that scares feel cheap or fake. Instead, Annabelle Comes Home trusts the power of restraint. Visual effects are deployed sparingly, which makes each supernatural moment hit harder. You get a break from constant digital manipulation, so when something genuinely eerie happens, it's like a punch to the gut. This pacing and the use of effects keeps the audience on edge without numbing them to the horror. When the story calls for ghostly apparitions and spirits, the CGI again opts for subtlety. The ghosts flicker, shimmer, or blur in a way that feels ethereal and fleeting, rather than flashy or gaudy. These effects suggest presence without overwhelming the scene, making the paranormal encounters feel like glimpses into another, darker world rather than overt special effects showpieces. This approach enhances the psychological terror because what you don't see clearly is often scarier than what's fully revealed. Lighting and color grading also play a role in how visual effects blend into the film's world. The glow of Annabelle's eyes when possessed, the eerie red hues, and the way light interacts with shadows and digital enhancements all feel meticulously crafted. It's not just about slapping on a digital glow, but integrating these effects with the natural lighting and composition, so they feel part of the same reality. This careful integration prevents any jarring visual disconnect and adds to the immersive experience. What's fascinating is how the film uses effects to reinforce themes, too. The containment of evil inside the artifact room is reflected visually by how the space is shot and lit, with shadows creeping along walls and subtle digital flourishes that hint at a lurking menace just behind locked doors. Visual effects here aren't just decorative, they support the story's tension about what happens when you try to cage something truly dark and malevolent. In the end, the visual effects and CGI in Annabelle Comes Home serve the film's goal perfectly. They create an eerie, believable supernatural world without ever stealing focus or breaking immersion. The mix of practical and digital effects feels like a masterclass in balance, showing respect for traditional horror craft while embracing the possibilities of modern technology. This careful craftsmanship keeps the scares feeling fresh, the atmosphere thick, and the doll's haunting presence genuinely unsettling. You come away not just entertained but truly creeped out, which is exactly what a horror movie aiming to terrify should achieve. When diving deeper into the set design and locations of Annabelle Comes Home, it becomes clear that the filmmakers put a ton of thought and care into crafting environments that don't just serve as a background but actively pull the audience into the story's eerie world. The sets are rich with detail, and each space feels layered with history and tension, making the haunting atmosphere not just believable but palpable. The way these physical spaces are constructed and used throughout the film adds an incredible depth that truly enhances the horror experience. Starting with the Warrens' house, it's more than just a family home. It's a treasure trove of paranormal history, a place that breathes mystery and unease. The production designers leaned into this duality perfectly. On one hand, you have warm, cozy touches, vintage furniture, old family photos, well-used bookshelves, and homey lighting that make the place feel lived in and comforting. But just beneath that surface warmth is a layer of coldness and tension, represented by locked doors, heavy chains, and the ominous artifact room filled with unsettling relics. This contrast plays a huge role in establishing the film's tone. The house becomes a visual metaphor for the thin veil between the normal world and the supernatural chaos waiting to break free. The artifact room itself is a standout in terms of set design. It's cramped, dimly lit, and cluttered with strange, often disturbing objects carefully stored away, almost like a museum of nightmares. The dusty glass cases, iron chains, and cryptic symbols all come together to create a claustrophobic and eerie environment that feels charged with malevolent energy. This room is not just a setting but almost a character. Its foreboding presence casts a shadow over the entire film, reminding us constantly that evil is being contained but can break loose at any moment. The painstaking attention to detail here, from the faded labels on boxes to the cobwebs in corners, adds layers of authenticity that draw the viewer in and make the supernatural threat feel tangible. Moving beyond the Warrens' home, the film also uses other locations strategically to ground the story in a relatable reality. Daniela's neighborhood and home are designed with an eye for normalcy, using everyday props and spaces that feel familiar. Bedrooms with typical teenage clutter, modest suburban streets, and simple living rooms. This familiarity is crucial because it creates a stark contrast with the sinister events unfolding, making the supernatural elements feel even more invasive and threatening. By situating horror in the midst of the ordinary, the film taps into a common fear that evil can reach into the safety of your own home. The props scattered throughout these spaces deserve special mention, too. Far from being mere decoration, they work hard to build the story's mythology. For example, the religious artifacts, old photographs, vintage dolls, and mystical talismans are carefully placed to hint at the Warrens' extensive experience dealing with dark forces. These items are worn, aged, and often bear marks of wear or damage, suggesting a long history of battles against evil. Even smaller details like the rusty locks on doors or the heavy chains securing Annabelle's case carry symbolic weight, reinforcing themes of containment and protection. The props contribute a sense of realism that helps suspend disbelief, making the haunted world feel convincingly real. Lighting and color palettes are thoughtfully integrated with the set design to deepen the mood. The warm, muted earth tones of the Warrens' home lend an antique, almost nostalgic feel that contrasts beautifully with the colder, harsher lighting used during supernatural moments. When something eerie happens, the shift in lighting, from soft glows to sharp shadows or sudden flickers, creates a visual jolt that heightens suspense. The careful choreography between light and shadow turns the sets into a playground of fear, where corners hide threats and every flicker of candlelight or shadow could mean danger. This dynamic lighting is especially effective in the artifact room, where the dimness makes every object seem more mysterious and foreboding. Spatial design is another key element that makes the sets so effective. The filmmakers use confined hallways, narrow staircases, and small rooms to create a feeling of entrapment. The characters often seem boxed in, with limited places to escape from the encroaching evil. This claustrophobia isn't accidental. It mirrors the narrative's theme of containment and the tension of being trapped by forces beyond control. You can almost feel the walls closing in as Annabelle's malevolent presence grows stronger, which amplifies the sense of urgency and fear. The way the sets force characters to move through tight spaces or locked rooms makes every encounter with the supernatural feel more dangerous and immediate. Outdoor locations, while not as frequent, are carefully chosen and designed to maintain the film's eerie tone. Shadows stretch long over suburban streets, backyards are dimly lit and foreboding, and even a simple walk down the street feels charged with potential menace. These outdoor scenes remind us that the evil lurking inside the Warrens' home isn't contained to one place. It threatens to spill out into the wider world. The production design here maintains a subtle creepiness, using fog, low light, and framing to keep viewers on edge. What's really impressive is how all these elements, sets, props, lighting, spatial design, work together harmoniously. The production design team created environments that do more than look good on screen. They actively build tension, hint at backstory, and deepen the audience's emotional engagement. The spaces feel like they hold secrets and histories, inviting viewers to look closer and feel the weight of the supernatural lurking beneath the surface. Ultimately, the set design and locations in Annabelle Comes Home are an essential part of what makes the film work so well. They create a rich, immersive world where horror feels immediate and real, where every creak and shadow carries meaning, and where the line between the familiar and the terrifying is always just a breath away. The careful attention to detail, the smart use of space and lighting, and the layered props all combine to build an environment that is as much a character in the story as the people and spirits that inhabit it. This thoughtful world-building pulls the audience in, making the scares hit harder because they unfold in a place that feels utterly believable, and that's a huge part of why the film sticks with you long after the credits roll. When you really dig into the dialogue and script of Annabelle Comes Home, it's fascinating to see how much careful thought has gone into making the spoken words fit the film's unique blend of horror, character-driven moments, and atmospheric tension. The script isn't aiming to be highbrow or overly poetic. It knows it's part of a supernatural horror franchise where the real star is the creepy doll and the unsettling events around it. Yet within that framework, the dialogue manages to be surprisingly effective, striking a balance between natural, believable conversations and key moments loaded with emotional and thematic weight. One of the strongest aspects of the script is how it captures the way teenagers actually speak. Daniela and her friends banter like a real group of teens. There's casual sarcasm, teasing, confusion, and genuine fear that comes through in their exchanges. This authenticity grounds the story and makes the supernatural chaos feel all the more invasive. Hearing these characters speak in familiar ways helps the audience relate to them, making the scares hit harder because it feels like these could be ordinary kids caught in an extraordinary nightmare. The dialogue avoids the common horror movie trap of stiff or overly dramatic lines, instead opting for a more conversational tone that keeps things grounded. The adult characters, especially Ed and Lorraine Warren, have dialogue that's quieter but carries real emotional resonance. Their conversations are filled with an undercurrent of seriousness and responsibility. The script uses their words to communicate the gravity of their work dealing with the paranormal, as well as the personal sacrifices they make. Their lines aren't flashy or exaggerated. Instead, they convey a deep sense of faith and commitment. This gives the film a layer of sincerity and heart beneath the horror, reminding us that it's not just about scares but about real human struggle and belief in something bigger than themselves. These moments bring a different kind of tension, less about immediate fright and more about the emotional burden of confronting evil. A smart feature of the script is how it uses dialogue to plant subtle hints and build suspense without spelling everything out. Characters drop warnings, share uneasy observations, or make offhand remarks that hint at the danger lurking beneath the surface. These lines work like breadcrumbs that keep viewers guessing and engaged, creating a growing sense of dread. Instead of having characters explain the horror directly, the script trusts the audience to pick up on clues, which makes the scares feel more earned and organic. This technique respects the intelligence of the viewers and adds to the film's atmosphere by allowing fear to grow gradually. There are also moments in the script where a single line perfectly encapsulates the film's themes or the character's emotional state. These aren't necessarily the kind of quotes you'd find on a motivational poster, but they carry weight in the context of the story. For example, lines that reflect the tension between skepticism and belief, or those that hint at the fragility of safety in a world invaded by evil, stick with you because they resonate on a deeper level. These small but sharp lines act like emotional anchors that help shape the movie's tone and remind the audience what's really at stake. Humor in Annabelle Comes Home is subtle and well-placed. It's not there to undermine the horror but to add a touch of realism and make characters more relatable. The teen characters' sarcasm and witty remarks provide brief but welcome relief from the mounting tension, making them feel more like real people rather than just horror movie victims. These light moments create a contrast that makes the scary parts hit even harder, since the audience is allowed a brief moment to breathe before the next wave of fear. The humor also reinforces character dynamics and helps build the camaraderie between friends, which raises the emotional stakes when danger arrives. The script is also very deliberate about when to pull back from dialogue and let silence or action fill the space. Sometimes, what's not said is just as important as what is. The timing of pauses, the weight of a look, or the sudden quiet before a scare all contribute to the tension in ways that dialogue alone couldn't achieve. This restraint allows the film to control its rhythm effectively, creating moments where the audience's anticipation builds until it finally explodes into action or terror. The editing of the script in this way is key to maintaining the mood and pacing that horror fans expect. While Annabelle Comes Home doesn't go for overly complex or poetic writing, the script's simplicity is actually a strength. It's focused, clear, and emotionally honest. It balances the need for exposition with moments that feel lived in and genuine, and it supports the film's scares and emotional beats without getting in the way. The dialogue helps flesh out the characters and their relationships, making the supernatural events feel personal rather than just random scares. Overall, The dialogue and script serve the film's world beautifully. They keep things believable and relatable while enhancing the suspense and emotional depth. The writing respects the audience's ability to connect the dots and experience fear naturally without over-explaining or relying too heavily on clichés. This careful crafting of words and silences makes the dialogue a subtle but powerful tool that pulls viewers deeper into the haunting world of the Warrens and the cursed Annabelle doll, making every whispered warning and hushed conversation feel like part of the chilling story unfolding on screen. Annabelle Comes Home is a fascinating case study in how a horror film can both embrace and play with the conventions of its genre without losing its identity. At first glance, it might seem like just another haunted doll story. You know the drill. Creepy doll, spooky noises, flickering lights, and a group of characters trapped in a house with supernatural forces. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll notice the film consciously leans into these tropes while also sprinkling in enough originality and subtle twists to keep things interesting and avoid becoming a predictable rehash. The movie fully leans into the classic haunted house and possession framework that horror fans are intimately familiar with. It follows the expected path. The Warrens locking the Annabelle doll away in their artifact room, a group of teens inadvertently unleashing its evil, and the tension spiraling from there. This adherence to genre staples might feel safe on the surface, but it works because the film uses this structure as a solid foundation to build on. The Warrens' artifact room isn't just a backdrop, it becomes almost a character itself, a prison for darkness, filled with other cursed objects that hint at even deeper terrors lurking just out of sight. This setting adds a fresh layer to the haunted object trope, making the environment claustrophobic and packed with unseen menace. Suspense in Annabelle Comes Home is handled with a steady, patient hand. Instead of throwing relentless jump scares at the audience, the film invests in atmosphere and slow-building dread. It's the kind of tension that creeps in gradually, where every shadow could be hiding something, every creak might signal danger, and silence itself feels threatening. This approach respects the audience's intelligence, trusting viewers to feel unease through subtle cues rather than relying on cheap scares. The pacing supports this tension perfectly, giving enough breathing room between scares to build anticipation and make every scare hit with maximum impact. Action in the film is minimal but well-crafted. You won't see any high-octane chases or big set-piece battles, but the scenes where characters confront the supernatural are charged with immediate, claustrophobic fear. The threat feels personal and invasive, and the characters scramble to contain the evil adds urgency without shifting into blockbuster territory. This restraint keeps the story tightly focused on psychological horror and makes the stakes feel more intimate and real, which can be much scarier than an overblown spectacle. Humor is another subtle ingredient that the film uses wisely. It's not a comedy by any stretch, but the natural banter and reactions of the teenagers provide just enough levity to humanize the characters and break the tension without undermining the horror. These moments of humor arise organically from the characters' personalities and the absurdity of their situation, adding a touch of realism. They serve as brief emotional reset points, allowing the audience to connect with the characters on a more personal level before the scares ramp up again. This balance between tension and humor is a smart choice, making the scary moments feel earned rather than exhausting. Drama in the film is understated but effective. The emotional core revolves around themes of protection, trust, and confronting fear, ideas that are classic in horror but handled here with sincerity and simplicity. The relationships between characters aren't overcomplicated, which works well because it keeps the focus on the supernatural conflict while still giving the audience a reason to care about who survives and why. The emotional beats are woven seamlessly into the scares, adding depth without slowing the pace. Where Annabelle Comes Home really shines is in how it both honors and lightly subverts genre expectations. It doesn't try to reinvent the wheel, but it does expand the haunted doll mythos in interesting ways by introducing the artifact room concept and emphasizing the Warrens' role as guardians against evil. This expansion broadens the scope from just one creepy object to an entire world of paranormal danger, which adds new layers to a familiar formula. The inclusion of a tight-knit group of teenagers adds energy and relatability, injecting fresh dynamics that help differentiate it from its predecessors. The film also manages a careful balance in tone, mixing suspenseful moments with quick bursts of humor and restrained drama. This balance keeps the viewing experience dynamic and prevents the film from becoming monotonous or too bleak. The pacing complements this mix well, with tension building patiently before erupting in well-timed scares or emotional exchanges, creating a rhythm that feels natural and engaging. In terms of originality, the movie doesn't break new ground in the horror genre, but it doesn't have to. It understands its audience and uses its genre knowledge to deliver what fans want: a chilling atmosphere, a compelling supernatural threat, believable characters, and moments of genuine fear. It plays to its strengths by combining familiar elements with just enough innovation, like the artifact room and character dynamics, to avoid feeling stale or overly formulaic. Ultimately, Annabelle Comes Home is a neat example of how genre films can celebrate tradition while still finding ways to surprise and engage. It shows that even when working within a well-worn framework, smart storytelling choices, balanced tone, and a focus on character and atmosphere can keep a horror film fresh and entertaining. This is a movie that knows what it is, embraces it wholeheartedly, and invites the audience to enjoy the ride through familiar but still spooky territory. Annabelle Comes Home may not be the kind of horror movie that loudly announces it's trying to comment on social or cultural issues, but if you take a closer look, you'll find it quietly weaving in themes that resonate with real-world anxieties and human experiences. It's like the film is wearing a spooky mask, but underneath, it's engaging with some surprisingly thoughtful ideas that reflect broader cultural conversations without ever feeling preachy or out of place. One of the clearest threads running through the film is the tension between belief and skepticism. The Warrens, as paranormal investigators, embody a kind of steadfast faith, not just in the supernatural but in the idea that good and evil are real forces that shape our world. This faith clashes with the doubts and curiosity of the younger characters who aren't sure what to believe or who don't fully understand the dangers they're messing with. This dynamic echoes a very contemporary cultural theme. In a world flooded with conflicting information and skepticism, how do people choose what to believe? How do they deal with things that don't fit neatly into logic or science? The film doesn't overtly debate these questions, but the tension between trust and doubt plays out naturally in the story, reflecting a larger cultural dialogue about faith, whether religious, spiritual, or even just faith in the unseen. The artifact room where the Annabelle doll is locked away stands as a potent symbol for boundaries and control, and that ties into another cultural anxiety about safety and the need to contain threats. In the movie, the Warrens' goal is to protect the world by confining dangerous objects and supernatural forces in a secure space, an attempt to quarantine evil and keep it from spilling into everyday life. This metaphor feels especially relevant today, when societies grapple with containing dangers, whether it's pandemics, social unrest, or misinformation, and the limits of how much control we really have. When the artifact room's boundaries are breached, it's like the film is tapping into the collective fear that our fragile sense of safety can be shattered at any moment. This idea of containment and breach adds a layer of real-world tension to the supernatural scares. The teenage characters' curiosity and defiance in poking around the forbidden artifact room also mirror a universal cultural theme about youth and rebellion. Their desire to test limits, to question authority, and to explore the unknown reflects classic coming-of-age struggles that many cultures understand well. Their journey in the film isn't just about surviving the supernatural threat. It's also about growing up and learning that actions have consequences. This theme resonates beyond the horror context because it speaks to the bittersweet process of leaving childhood innocence behind and facing the complexities of the adult world, fears and all. On a deeper emotional level, the film touches on trauma and its lingering effects. The Warrens' mission to keep evil contained can be read as a metaphor for how people and families deal with past wounds and dark histories that refuse to stay buried. While Annabelle Comes Home doesn't explicitly explore psychological trauma in detail, the idea that evil can echo across time and affect multiple generations gives the story an emotional weight that goes beyond the supernatural. It's a subtle nod to how real-life trauma haunts individuals and communities, sometimes unseen but always present, shaping fears and decisions. This layer adds a haunting poignancy to the scares and reminds us that horror often reflects very human struggles with pain and loss. Faith, whether spiritual, emotional, or communal, is another quiet but powerful theme. The Warrens' confidence and resilience in the face of darkness suggest that belief itself is a kind of strength, a force that can push back against despair and evil. This message isn't hammered home, but rather implied through their actions and the story's progression. In a genre that often focuses on terror and helplessness, this emphasis on faith and courage offers a ray of hope. It suggests that even in the darkest moments, holding on to belief and protecting loved ones can make a difference. Interestingly, the film doesn't dive into explicit political commentary or tackle hot-button social issues head-on. Instead, it keeps its lens fairly tight, focusing on personal, spiritual, and emotional themes that feel more universal. This choice helps the film maintain its supernatural horror identity without getting bogged down in topical debates or becoming dated. It also means the movie's social and cultural messages come through gently and naturally, rather than feeling forced or agenda-driven. In all, Annabelle Comes Home manages to weave social and cultural commentary into its spooky story in a way that feels seamless and organic. It's not shouting a manifesto, but it's definitely engaging with ideas about belief, safety, trauma, and growing up that resonate with contemporary audiences. The film uses these themes to add depth and texture beneath its scares, inviting viewers to think about the fears and hopes that shape our world today, even as they're gripping their seats through the supernatural thrills. This subtle layering makes the movie more than just a haunted doll flick. It's a reflection of real human concerns wrapped in a chilling and entertaining package. Annabelle Comes Home manages to grab its audience by the emotions in a way that goes far beyond just the typical horror movie scares. From the very first moments, it sets a tone that's not just about jump scares but about drawing you into a world where the tension is palpable and the stakes feel real. You're not just watching a haunted doll story. You're invited to experience the fear, curiosity, and even moments of relief right alongside the characters. The film creates an emotional roller coaster that keeps you engaged and invested, which is key in making horror truly effective. What really stands out is how the movie uses pacing and atmosphere to build emotional resonance. Instead of overwhelming viewers with non-stop scares, it masterfully mixes quiet, unsettling moments with bursts of intense fright. This ebb and flow give your nerves time to recover and your anticipation time to build, which makes the big moments hit harder. Those silent seconds before a door creaks open or a shadow moves just out of sight are filled with dread that's almost tangible. It's this skillful manipulation of tension that pulls you in emotionally and keeps your heart pounding in sync with the story. But the emotional engagement isn't just about fear. The film balances the scares with moments of warmth, humor, and genuine connection between characters. The teenage protagonists aren't just there to scream and run. They have personalities, quirks, and relationships that feel real. Their banter, moments of playful teasing, and sincere concern for each other create emotional anchors that make you care about what happens to them. When the supernatural forces threaten their safety, you're not just scared, you're worried. This emotional investment makes the horror more impactful because it's grounded in human experience rather than just spectacle. The film also taps into a universal fascination with the unknown and the paranormal. The artifact room is like a treasure chest of creepy curiosities, each with its own backstory and dark mystery. This sparks the audience's imagination, encouraging viewers to wonder what else might be lurking in the shadows or hidden away behind locked doors. It's a clever way to engage beyond just the immediate plot, inviting deeper curiosity and discussion. Fans love to speculate about the objects, the lore behind them, and what might happen next, which keeps the film alive in conversations long after the viewing. Emotionally, the theme of protection and family runs strong throughout the movie. The Warrens are portrayed as guardians willing to risk everything to shield others from harm, and this sense of responsibility adds real emotional weight. You feel the pressure and danger they face, and moments where they show courage or sacrifice resonate deeply. It's not just about battling ghosts and demons, it's about love, commitment, and the fight to keep darkness at bay for those you care about. These themes give the story heart and depth, making it more than just a series of scares. Another aspect that boosts audience engagement is how the movie invites repeat viewings. On the surface, it's a thrilling haunted doll story, but as you watch again, you start noticing details and hints that deepen the lore and character dynamics. The film rewards attention to detail, which encourages fans to revisit it, discuss theories, and explore the mythology further. This layered storytelling helps create a community of viewers who bond over shared discoveries and interpretations, enhancing the overall experience. The range of emotions Annabelle Comes Home evokes is broad and effective. There are moments that make you jump and scream, of course, but there are also instances that provoke laughter, relief, sadness, and even awe. The careful blend of these feelings means the film never feels one-dimensional or predictable. Instead, it takes you on a dynamic journey that's as emotionally engaging as it is thrilling. In the end, the film's ability to emotionally resonate comes from its mix of expertly crafted suspense, relatable characters, and a story that speaks to universal fears and hopes. It pulls you into a haunted world, but keeps you grounded with human connections and compelling themes. Whether you're sitting on the edge of your seat during a terrifying moment or smiling at a heartfelt interaction, Annabelle Comes Home keeps you hooked and invested from start to finish. It's this emotional roller coaster and invitation to engage that make it not just a fun scare fest, but a memorable experience that sticks with you long after the credits roll. When you really dive into how Annabelle Comes Home stacks up against other films within the horror genre, especially those centered around haunted dolls, cursed objects, or supernatural hauntings, it becomes clear that the movie plays a smart game of balancing the familiar with some fresh twists. It definitely doesn't stray too far from the formula fans expect. After all, it's part of a sprawling Conjuring universe, but it brings enough unique elements to keep things interesting and avoid feeling like a simple retread of what's come before. Starting with the Annabelle franchise itself, the first two films were heavily focused on establishing the backstory of the doll and setting a tone of creeping dread that built slowly and methodically. They worked on layering tension and using darkness, shadows, and jump scares in a way that really got under your skin. Annabelle Comes Home shifts gears a bit by situating the horror largely inside the Warrens' artifact room, a kind of supernatural prison for evil objects. This creates a new playground for scares, almost like a haunted museum of cursed items, rather than focusing on a single villainous doll. This expansion of scope is a clever move because it diversifies the types of terror the film can deliver. Instead of relying on the same haunted doll trope repeatedly, the movie invites viewers to imagine all kinds of malevolent forces lurking in the shadows, waiting to be unleashed. If you think about other haunted doll movies outside this universe, like the infamous Child's Play series with Chucky or older cult classics like Dolls, Annabelle Comes Home carves out a distinct identity by emphasizing supernatural suspense over slasher gore or campy humor. Chucky, for example, thrives on a darkly comedic and violent tone, mixing scares with sharp wit and outrageous antics. In contrast, Annabelle Comes Home leans into eerie atmospheres and unsettling moments, preferring slow-building dread and the unknown over overt violence or jokey scares. This puts it more in line with atmospheric horror, focusing on psychological unease and the fear of unseen forces, rather than making the doll the sole focus of aggressive terror. Looking at the bigger Conjuring universe, Annabelle Comes Home is interesting because it zooms in on a smaller, more intimate story than the main Conjuring films. While The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2 revolve around the Warrens themselves and their intense battles with powerful demons and haunted houses, this film narrows the lens to the Warrens' role as caretakers protecting the world from dangerous artifacts. This smaller scale gives it a slightly different flavor, a haunted house story where the house is more like a vault of evil. The focus on teenagers and their interactions also brings a fresher, younger energy that sets it apart from the often grave and serious tone of the Warrens' main investigations. This shift makes the film feel accessible to a younger audience while still retaining the franchise's signature supernatural menace. Comparing Annabelle Comes Home to other horror films directed or written by Gary Dauberman, who scripted this movie, you can see his characteristic focus on tension building and character-driven scares. Dauberman's work often avoids cheap jump scares and instead invests in atmosphere and storytelling, which helps this film avoid some of the pitfalls that horror sequels sometimes fall into, like relying too much on shock value without substance. His touch brings a measured pace that balances moments of terror with character development and plot progression, ensuring that viewers stay engaged on multiple levels. The film's tone also sets it apart from other horror sequels that can sometimes feel like they're trying too hard to outdo previous entries. Annabelle Comes Home isn't about non-stop scares or raising the gore factor. It knows when to pull back and when to let tension simmer. This restraint gives the scares more impact and prevents the movie from becoming exhausting or predictable. The moments of levity between the teenage characters, sprinkled throughout, also help break the tension just enough to keep things feeling fresh and relatable. If you throw classic haunted house films like Poltergeist or the Amityville Horror into the comparison mix, Annabelle Comes Home fits comfortably within that tradition, but with a modern twist. It takes the familiar idea of an evil presence trapped within a confined space and builds on it with a rich supernatural mythology tied to the Warrens' universe. This gives the film layers of backstory and interconnected lore that make the haunted house concept feel less like a standalone event and more like part of a bigger battle between good and evil. It's a smart way to deepen the stakes and give fans of the franchise something to chew on beyond the surface scares. Within the broader category of franchise horror films, Annabelle Comes Home follows a tried-and-true formula: introduce a supernatural threat, isolate a group of characters in a confined space, and build tension through escalating encounters with evil forces. But it differentiates itself by focusing on containment rather than outright conquest. The evil isn't necessarily defeated but held at bay in the artifact room, which adds a unique twist on the usual haunted house or possession story. This focus on the ongoing consequences of evil lurking rather than a final exorcism or showdown gives the film a distinct flavor in the crowded field of horror sequels. In sum, while Annabelle Comes Home doesn't reinvent the wheel in terms of horror storytelling, it makes smart choices that blend familiar genre elements with fresh angles and a clear connection to a larger mythology. It stands as a bridge between intense paranormal thrillers and more straightforward supernatural haunted house stories. Its mix of teenage protagonists, artifact-based scares, and ties to the Warrens' universe make it both accessible and engaging. Whether you're a die-hard Conjuring fan or just a casual horror viewer, it offers enough familiar thrills alongside new twists to hold your attention and keep the chills coming. Annabelle Comes Home is a treasure trove of symbolism and metaphor that enriches the story far beyond the typical haunted doll horror flick. One of the most obvious yet powerful symbols is the doll Annabelle herself. More than just a creepy toy, she embodies the presence of evil that is both contained and ever-present. The fact that the Warrens lock her inside a glass case surrounded by religious relics immediately signals a deeper metaphor. Evil isn't destroyed, it's restrained, imprisoned behind fragile barriers. This glass case acts like a thin membrane between the safety of the ordinary world and the chaos lurking just underneath. It's a visual metaphor for the delicate boundary between order and disorder, between the seen and unseen, between peace and malevolence. The tension of knowing that this evil is literally locked up but could break free at any moment keeps the audience on edge, symbolizing how danger can feel close and contained, but never fully gone. The recurring theme of containment versus release runs through the entire film, reflected not just in Annabelle's prison, but in the Warrens' artifact room as a whole. Each item locked away holds a story of darkness, a secret curse, or a malevolent force waiting to escape. This setting itself is symbolic, almost like a museum of the supernatural, a physical representation of memory and trauma that's been locked away but never erased. This reflects a broader psychological metaphor, how people try to bottle up fears, guilt, and past horrors deep inside, but those suppressed demons can resurface unexpectedly. The artifact room becomes a chilling metaphor for the human mind and soul, filled with hidden dangers that can't be ignored forever. Light and darkness are used masterfully as visual metaphors throughout the movie. Many scenes play with flickering candlelight or the stark contrast between shadowed corners and beams of light, which visually represent the eternal struggle between good and evil. The flickering candlelight is especially potent, a small, fragile flame fighting back against the encroaching darkness. This dance of light and dark symbolizes hope, faith, and protection battling against fear, despair, and malevolence. The tension created by these lighting choices visually tells the story of balance, how fragile and precious peace is in a world where evil constantly threatens to overrun it. Mirrors and reflections pop up frequently, adding another symbolic layer. Mirrors in horror often signify boundaries between worlds or self-reflection, but here they also hint at the distortion of reality and identity when confronted with supernatural evil. The distorted reflections of characters symbolize how they are being affected or influenced by the unseen forces, blurring the lines between what is real and what is supernatural. This plays into a larger metaphor about perception and truth, how evil can warp reality and twist what we think we know. Characters themselves carry symbolic weight that deepens the film's themes. Mary Ellen, the teenage protagonist, is more than just a scared girl. She symbolizes youthful innocence and bravery confronting darkness head-on. Her role can be interpreted as a metaphor for the transition from innocence to experience, the universal journey of facing fears and uncertainties as one grows up. The film uses her story to explore themes of courage and responsibility, showing that even ordinary people, especially young ones, have the power to confront and contain evil. This adds emotional resonance and gives the horror a relatable, human core. Sound design works hand in hand with the visual symbolism, with recurring eerie noises and whispered voices acting as auditory metaphors for lurking evil. These sounds represent the unseen, the intangible dread that can't be easily pinpointed but is always felt. They tap into primal fears, the fear of the unknown and the invisible, that heighten suspense and reinforce the idea that evil is always present, even when it can't be seen. This use of sound as metaphor enriches the atmosphere and plays with our subconscious, making the terror feel more immersive and psychological. The film also plays heavily with religious symbolism, pitting sacred objects like crucifixes, holy water, and prayers against the cursed artifacts in the doll. This contrast sets up a classic metaphorical battle between faith and fear, light and darkness, the sacred and the profane. The religious icons aren't just props but represent hope, protection, and the power of belief. This clash of symbols deepens the story's meaning, emphasizing that spiritual faith is a crucial weapon in the fight against evil forces. It suggests that beyond physical barriers, there are metaphysical ones fueled by belief and conviction. On a subtler level, the house and its rooms act as symbolic spaces. The artifact room is a cryptic vault of horrors, a place where past evils are locked away but never truly gone. The house itself becomes a metaphor for the human psyche, or the world at large, a place that looks normal and safe but hides dark secrets within its walls. The tension of the house as a living, breathing character filled with history and hidden dangers adds depth to the story's psychological impact. Altogether, these layers of symbolism and metaphor transform Annabelle Comes Home from a straightforward horror movie into a story with hidden depths. The glass case, the artifact room, the dance of light and shadow, mirrors, sounds, and religious icons all work together to create a rich, interconnected web of meaning. They invite the audience to look beyond the jump scares and creepy visuals and consider the larger ideas about fear, faith, memory, and courage. The film whispers that the true horror isn't just the evil you see but the fragile, complex ways we try to contain and understand it, how the battle between darkness and light is ongoing and deeply human. These hidden layers make watching the film a more rewarding and thought-provoking experience, encouraging viewers to revisit it and catch new meanings each time. Annabelle Comes Home plays a fascinating and vital role within the expansive Conjuring Universe, serving as much more than just another creepy doll movie. It acts like a keystone, holding together pieces of the larger supernatural puzzle that this franchise has carefully built over the years. This film doesn't just exist in isolation. Instead, it situates itself snugly within the overarching narrative of Ed and Lorraine Warren's paranormal investigations, offering fans a closer look into their world and the eerie aftermath of capturing one of the most infamous haunted objects, the Annabelle doll. It's almost like the secret chapter in the Warrens' storybook, shining a light on what happens when evil is supposedly locked away, but the shadows still linger just beneath the surface. Chronologically, Annabelle Comes Home fits in after the first Annabelle movie from 2014 but before Annabelle, Creation, making it a mid-story that fills in the timeline and expands the mythology. This positioning is smart because it gives the franchise a stronger sense of continuity and connection. Instead of feeling like just another spin-off, this film deepens the lore around the Warrens and their artifact room, a place that feels almost haunted itself. Every object in that room has a dark story behind it, and by focusing on the dangers lurking in that very space, the movie adds layers to the series' mythos. This turns the Warrens' home into a living museum of horrors, where the past and present collide and threaten to spill over into chaos at any moment. The historical context of the Warrens' actual lives also plays a big role in giving Annabelle Comes Home a different flavor compared to typical horror flicks. Ed and Lorraine Warren were real people who claimed to have investigated thousands of paranormal cases, and this connection to real-life events adds a layer of authenticity that elevates the movie's spooky atmosphere. While the film certainly dramatizes and takes creative liberties because, well, Hollywood, knowing it's inspired by true stories invites a certain uneasy fascination. It's as if the movie is whispering, "These things might be scarier because they actually happened," which makes the creepy moments hit harder. This blending of fact and fiction is a hallmark of the franchise and helps ground its supernatural scares in something more believable, even when the ghosts and demons get wild. The artifact room itself is a brilliant storytelling device loaded with historical and folkloric significance. It's a visual metaphor for the Warrens' career. Years of collecting haunted, cursed, or dangerous objects from around the world, each with its own eerie backstory. Some of these items are inspired by actual cases or legends, giving the film a sense of depth and a connection to broader supernatural traditions. Walking through that room feels like stepping into a haunted cabinet of curiosities where every piece holds secrets and dangers. It's a nod to the idea that history isn't just about the past, it can be alive, dangerous, and ready to jump out at you. This focus on the artifact room as a central location also reinforces the theme that evil isn't just a far-off menace, but something lurking quietly in familiar places. When viewed through the lens of the franchise, Annabelle Comes Home broadens the scope of the Conjuring Universe by blending horror with more intimate, character-driven drama. Introducing Mary Ellen, the Warrens' teenage babysitter, injects a new dynamic into the story. Her personal fears, family issues, and bravery add emotional depth beyond the usual jump scares and paranormal chaos. This mix of supernatural horror with coming-of-age themes and family drama adds fresh layers to the franchise's tone, keeping it from becoming repetitive. It also makes the Warrens feel more human and relatable, not just ghost hunters, but people with lives, fears, and loved ones to protect. This human element is crucial for maintaining audience investment across multiple films. The decision to keep much of the action confined to the Warrens' house also sets this movie apart from others in the franchise that take audiences on globe-spanning ghost hunts or exorcisms. This smaller, more claustrophobic setting builds a different kind of tension, where the horror feels immediate and personal. The house becomes a character in its own right, a seemingly safe place turned dangerous by the evil trapped inside. This focus on a single location highlights the idea that evil can invade even the most protected spaces, making the stakes feel higher and more urgent. It also allows the movie to explore the lore of the Warrens' home, turning it into a haunted fortress that holds both protection and peril. Comparing Annabelle Comes Home to other films in the Conjuring Universe, it brings something unique while respecting the franchise's core themes. It doesn't just recycle old scares or retread familiar ground. Instead, it expands the mythology and emotional stakes, offering new insights into the Warrens' lives and the legacy of their work. While earlier films often focused on specific hauntings or possessions, this one emphasizes the ongoing struggle of containment, how evil can't always be destroyed, only held at bay. This perspective adds complexity to the franchise's storytelling and keeps it evolving. From a historical and franchise standpoint, the movie serves as a vital link that enriches the entire Conjuring saga. It bridges gaps, deepens character arcs, and offers fresh scares, all while respecting the source material and the fans' expectations. It invites viewers, both longtime followers and newcomers, to dive deeper into a universe where the supernatural is real, the battle between good and evil is ongoing, and every object has a story. Ultimately, Annabelle Comes Home is more than just a scary movie. It's a chapter in a larger legend, a haunted storybook that continues to unfold with every cursed relic and whispered secret. Annabelle Comes Home is a fascinating example of how a well-managed budget and smart production choices can create a high-quality horror film that also scores big at the box office. With a production budget reported to be around $30 million, it might seem modest compared to the multi-hundred-million-dollar budgets of big blockbusters, but in the world of horror, this is actually a solid investment. What's remarkable is how the filmmakers stretched this budget to deliver a film that looks and feels much more expensive. They didn't rely on flashy, over-the-top CGI or sprawling locations. Instead, they focused on atmosphere, practical effects, and tight, focused storytelling, all of which maximize scare factor without blowing the budget. The confined setting of the Warrens' home and the artifact room was a smart move. It kept production costs down while creating a claustrophobic, tense environment that serves the horror perfectly. Production design, lighting, sound, and even makeup and prosthetics were all handled with care and attention, giving the film a polished look that enhances the mood and immerses viewers in the spooky world. The use of practical effects, like creepy dolls and eerie objects in the artifact room, adds a tactile, unsettling quality that expensive CGI often struggles to replicate. This approach shows a deep understanding of what makes horror effective. Sometimes subtlety and suggestion are scarier than anything overt. So from a production standpoint, the film's quality far outstrips what you might expect given the budget, demonstrating savvy resource management and creative decision-making. Now, looking at the financial side, Annabelle Comes Home proved to be a genuine box office success. It pulled in over $117 million worldwide, which is roughly 4 times its production budget. For a horror movie, this is fantastic, especially considering the genre often operates on smaller budgets with more niche audiences. The film's earnings confirm that audiences were hungry for another chapter in the Conjuring Universe, especially one that delved deeper into the Warrens' world and the infamous Annabelle doll. The return on investment is impressive, showing that the combination of a beloved franchise, clever marketing, and effective scares can translate directly into strong box office numbers. Marketing played a huge role in the film's commercial performance. Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema built excitement by emphasizing the movie's place within the Conjuring Universe, which already had a passionate fan base from previous hits. The trailers and promotional materials teased the suspense, the creepy artifacts, and the personal stakes involving the Warrens' babysitter, Mary Ellen. This marketing approach struck a great balance. It gave horror fans enough to be intrigued without revealing too much of the story or the scares. Leveraging the cultural fascination with haunted dolls and paranormal investigations, the campaign tapped into a ready-made audience eager to return to this eerie world. Audience reception also contributed significantly to the film's sustained success at the box office. While critical reviews were mixed to positive, the core audience, fans of the franchise and horror enthusiasts, embraced the film for its jump scares, atmospheric tension, and emotional beats. The film's ability to combine supernatural horror with relatable, character-driven drama helped it connect on a deeper level, encouraging repeat viewings and positive word of mouth. Horror movies often rely on community buzz and fan enthusiasm, and Annabelle Comes Home benefited from that dynamic, keeping the ticket sales steady beyond the initial release period. An interesting aspect of its box office journey is how it followed a classic horror film pattern, a strong opening fueled by fans, followed by steady attendance rather than a quick drop-off. This longevity at theaters reflects not just effective marketing, but also the movie's ability to engage and satisfy its audience. It's a reminder that horror films don't need massive opening weekends alone to be profitable. A steady flow of viewers over time can make all the difference. In summary, Annabelle Comes Home is a textbook example of how to balance production quality with budget constraints and still deliver a commercially successful film. The production team's smart use of resources, combined with a targeted marketing campaign and the loyal fan base of the Conjuring Universe, turned a $30 million investment into a $117 million plus global success. It proves that in horror, creativity, atmosphere, and brand power can be far more valuable than blockbuster budgets. This film's financial journey shows that with the right ingredients, a modestly budgeted horror movie can scare its way to the bank and leave both audiences and studios smiling. If you're eager to dive into the eerie, unsettling world of Annabelle Comes Home, there are plenty of ways to watch it, tailored perfectly to how you like to enjoy your horror fix. Let's start with the classic option, seeing it in theaters. If it's still playing in cinemas near you, that's hands down the best way to experience the full intensity of this film. Horror movies truly come alive on the big screen, where every flicker of lighting, every sudden jump scare, and the chilling score envelop you completely. The atmosphere of a dark theater, the sound booming from powerful speakers, and the collective energy of an audience reacting to the scares adds an extra layer of thrill that's hard to beat. There's something about sharing those jump moments with strangers that somehow makes the fear feel more real and more contagious. So, if you can catch Annabelle Comes Home on the big screen, do it. Bring your bravest friend or family member, grab some popcorn, and get ready to jump out of your seat together. But what if the theatrical run has ended, or you prefer to watch movies from the cozy comfort of your own home? No worries. Annabelle Comes Home is widely available on a variety of streaming platforms and digital rental or purchase services. Platforms like HBO Max, Amazon Prime Video, Google Play Movies, and Apple iTunes usually have it available either as part of their subscription package or for rental/purchase. Streaming lets you watch on your own schedule, rewind the parts that really freaked you out, or even binge-watch other movies in the Conjuring Universe right after. Watching at home lets you control the environment too. Dim the lights, crank up the volume, maybe even watch it late at night for that extra spooky vibe. Plus, you can pause for bathroom breaks. No need to worry about missing a scare. If you're someone who appreciates owning physical copies, Annabelle Comes Home is also available on Blu-ray and DVD. These versions often include extras that hardcore fans love, behind-the-scenes featurettes that reveal how the creepy doll was brought to life, interviews with the director and actors about what went into making the movie, and sometimes deleted scenes that didn't make the final cut. Having a physical copy means you can add it to your horror collection, lend it to friends who want to be scared, or just enjoy a reliable, no-internet-needed viewing anytime you want. Blu-ray's high-definition picture and sound quality really make the chilling visuals and eerie soundscape pop, enhancing the overall experience. For the absolute fullest impact, watching Annabelle Comes Home on a big screen with a quality sound system is ideal. The movie's use of subtle sound cues, sudden loud noises, and atmospheric music really comes to life with immersive audio equipment. Those quiet moments before a scare become intensely suspenseful, and the jumps hit that much harder. If you don't have a home theater setup, watching on a large TV with good speakers or using headphones can also do the trick. Headphones, in particular, can make the creepy whispers and eerie creaks feel like they're happening right next to you, turning your living room into your own personal haunted house. No matter where or how you watch Annabelle Comes Home, the film delivers a strong blend of suspense, supernatural scares, and emotional moments that work across any viewing platform. Whether you're braving it out in a dark theater surrounded by strangers, enjoying the privacy of your own home, or diving into special features on Blu-ray, this film knows how to pull you in and keep you hooked from start to finish. So set your preferences, prepare your nerves, and get ready for a chilling journey into the heart of the Warrens' haunted artifact room. This one's guaranteed to stick with you long after the credits roll, no matter how you choose to watch it.